So the root cause of the policy that I've decided to tackle with this project is the issue of reentry and recidivism. So basically, near 650,000 people are released from federal and state incarceration back into their communities each year. Recent studies they actually indicate that over two-thirds of those released state prisoners are expected to be arrested for a felony or a serious misdemeanor within 3 years after their release. There's many complex factors that lead to the high rates of recidivism that we see throughout our criminal justice system. Substance abuse disorder, mental illness, poverty. Poverty. There's three of the largest contributing factors. But the main issues that I want to focus on is transitional housing, temporary food assistance, and identification provision upon release. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, formerly incarcerated individuals are almost 10 times more likely to become homeless. In my personal experience working in recovery housing, men were often released from prison with just absolutely no personal identification, no money for food, and only the first week of their housing paid for because it was part of the entry into the program. And that's only if they still had family that could pay that they could get into a program like that. The stress of that situation, on top of all of the requirements that the parole board expects of them, is often the precipitating factor in their return to just their old ways, to their methods of survival that they've always known, and it's followed inevitably by another trip to prison, in many cases. So, yeah, the problem analysis, the impact of incarceration on the individual offender, it follows them on their record. So, at the micro level, it makes it harder for them to find employment, housing, even basic help for things like food stamps. Um, so this, of course, has a devastating effect on families, financially, socially, and emotionally. The stress of these barriers they often increase the chances of reoffending. The same financial barriers due to past incarceration can also lead to higher rates of social service utilization. Programs like TANF for women who their significant other may be locked up, because of those things. It's an increase in child protective services, just many things that cost taxpayers money. And it actually costs taxpayers about $22,000 per year to house an inmate. As of 2019, the population between jails and prisons was 38,000 inmates, equaling $778 million dollars in Missouri alone. Every offender that can stay out of prison and just keep his family together, they saves a lot of taxpayer money and potentially prevents generational recidivism. So a policy analysis. So the policy that's been in play regarding recidivism and it's actually called the Second Chance Act. It was brought to Congress with the intent of reauthorizing grant programs that were originally on the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968. The reasoning behind the bill, which itself it actually cites that the reasoning is because in 2002 over 7 million people were incarcerated in federal or state prisons or in local jails. Nearly 650,000 people are released from federal and state incarceration into communities nationwide each year. And just like I had said in the beginning, two-thirds of those state prisoners are expected to be rearrested for felonies or serious misdemeanors within 3 years. So the bill, it authorizes up to $165 million dollars to go to state and local authorities and nonprofits for them to create and fund reentry services. Now, keep in mind, $165 million dollars, it's $778 million just for paying for housing for the people that are just in Missouri. So these grants are authorized to be used for substance treatment, education like a GED, job planning, family programming, housing, and other services. Now, on paper, it looks like it could make significant strides in reducing recidivism, but on the ground, where the feet hit the pavement, it falls extremely short of helping the majority of returning offenders. In reality, the use of these funds is left up to the entities that are willing and able to implement the programs. The problem lies in the fact that applying for these grants means meeting over a dozen stringent requirements and the financial capability to split the bill. These grants they will not pay for more than 50% of the needed revenue to operate a program. So this means unless the desire and the financial means are already available at the state level or in the hands of a nonprofit, then these grants don't get used. Because of these requirements, coupled with limited funding, only 164,000 of the 5.8 million inmates released from prison between 2009 and 2018 actually received any benefit from the Second Chance Act. The Second Chance Act was a bipartisan step in the right direction towards addressing recidivism, but the translation from paper to parole has just been less than overwhelmingly effective. So historically, there are barriers when it comes to talking about prison policy. There are barriers to making effective changes that are created by stigma. American society is highly competitive and individualized, and there's a common attitude that each person has the freedom of choice and the opportunities in front of them to, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And just make a decent life for themselves. And this attitude leads many people to look down upon those who have a criminal background with distrust and cynicism. These attitudes they extenuate the discrimination in employment, housing, and treatment that often leads to recidivism. So in today's political climate, criminal justice reform is a hotly contested subject. During the last election cycle, the Republican rallying cry was that crime is increasing in Democrat-run cities, and because these cities are becoming weak on crime. There are also powerful interest groups in Washington, like the NRA and police associations like the National Sheriff's Association and the Fraternal Order of Police and the National Association of Police Organizations. They're the strongest opponents of criminal justice reform. They don't want anything to change. So this is my proposed solution. Okay, so the proposal that I've set forth is a policy or a program that pays for inmates' bare necessities for the first 3 weeks that they follow their release from incarceration. Like I said in the beginning, I've seen guys get released with literally nothing but the clothes on their back and a bag of hygiene products. That's it. So the cost would include entry and 3 weeks of housing fees paid in a transitional house or sober living program. This average cost is around $500. This also would include funding to pay for identification, including a birth certificate, and at a cost of $15, and a photo ID at a cost of about $16. So each inmate will be also be afforded at least an initial emergency SNAP benefits. Food stamps of around $200 is usually where it starts out, 194 or something like that. So, for a qualifying inmate that's going into reentry, it would cost about $731 to give them the opportunity to, find work and begin paying for these things for themselves. Gives them the stability to begin doing that, and the funding could be handled through the Department of Corrections and the Division of Probation or Parole, either with public money through taxes or what I'm advocating is using the inmate fund. Okay, each month, offenders on probation or parole they have to pay an intervention fee of no more than $60. Those funds are put into the inmate fund, which can be used to pay for mental health, substance use treatment, electronic monitoring, residential services, employment services, and other corrections services. But by adding the cost of the housing, food, and ID to the inmate's monthly fees, much of that cost could be on the inmate and not on the state. Like I said again, it would just give them a firm foundation to be able to begin their transition back into society. Thank you.